Hi, welcome back to Zoomers the podcast. I'm Isla.
And I'm Eliana. Welcome back. We're going to be discussing whether or not our generation, Gen Z, is sheltered. So we'll start with some stats. Our generation is the most ethnically diverse to date. And we're also going to be the last generation that has a Caucasian majority. So we're going to see a huge upsurge in both Latino and Asian populations in the coming years.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out where we live here in the United States because it's already such a diverse country. And so I think that'll be interesting to see if that changes the dynamic, if it does.
Yeah, maybe in states like ours, California, it won't be so obvious because, especially in the Bay Area and bigger cities like LA, you can see the diversity really clearly. But in other states that may not be as diverse right now, you can probably see and watch as the diversity grows. So I think that diversity also has a huge effect on our generation's social acceptance and our openness to other kinds of people. And we're also very active about things that we're passionate about. So have you seen like any sort of activism around in our generation?
Yeah, for sure. And like protests and stuff, that's a pretty prominent thing, especially in our generation. And like on Instagram, because that's something I'm pretty active on too. I see a lot of people like putting things on their stories, like expressing their views and cultures. And so you can really get exposed to other people's ideas through social media.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people are very vocal about their political views and like their passion for social and humanitarian issues. So I think it's really cool because the internet honestly has taught me a lot more about huge issues and different kinds of people than any school class or my parents even have taught me. So yeah, it's honestly, I'm very grateful for it. I back in sixth or seventh grade, like up until then, I didn't really know or understand the concept of like homosexuality or being gay. And I saw a video before that of like two guys getting married. And I kind of freaked out and was taken aback. And I literally thought it was a prank. Like I thought it was something to be laughed at. So I laughed at it, which is very problematic, honestly, looking back at it, because it's normal. It's completely normal. So I think, yeah, the internet has definitely exposed me to those things. So I think we're a little less sheltered than generations past when they were only exposed to things in their immediate surroundings.
I would agree because at least for me, when I was growing up, I think personally I got a lot of the different worldviews and perspectives I did from my friends, a lot of my like childhood friends. But I think like a lot of my friends when I was growing up were really questioning their sexualities. But I think they got that questioning from they sourced it back to like the internet and the media because they were able to see that there's like and like they had such radical and different beliefs, I think, a lot of them from me and from a lot of people, and I think they got those beliefs from the internet, but I personally got them from them. So I feel like that was, but I think that's only mainly because my family like didn't really encourage technology too much when I was a kid. They wanted me to be more outdoors and hanging out with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of my friends definitely, for sure, they were going through a lot and they therefore had a ton of different beliefs, which is why I think I have a lot of interesting beliefs today. And I really think I'm a different person without them. Like religion, like that's something that I've never really taken in. But like my parents have definitely like we've talked about it, and like my parents have said like both of them they went to church as kids and they prayed and did a lot of other things and were pretty active members of their church and their communities. But like they just once they like left their childhood and became like adults, they kind of stopped. And I think that's just because they got like pretty busy, which is I think why a lot of people like stop partaking in that type of thing. And I think because that when they stopped and then when they had like me and my brother and stuff, then we were really not like exposed to like religion.
Mhm.
And I honestly like never really thought about God or any of that stuff like ever. I was not thinking about it at all until like I met some of my friends who were definitely either more religious or like you, and then like my other friends who were like pretty extreme atheists, and that's how I learned like what like atheism is or whatever. Because like I didn't even know that was like a thing until
Yeah.
like actually I figured it out pretty early on, but I think like I didn't figure out until I was like 10, which I think is like that's like more than half my life without even really thinking about religion.
Yeah.
And so I think that's interesting. Like today now, I would say I'm still an atheist, but like recently I've been like learning more about different religions, and I feel like I identify sometimes with some of their beliefs in that religion,
Mhm.
whereas like atheists as a whole don't really generally support that type of belief.
Sure.
But I really think like just because you think you're like you would consider yourself in some religion, I really don't think that means you have to like believe in like all their values, you know?
Exactly. Like, and that's something that I struggle with a lot and that I get asked about is like, how much do you devote yourself to religion? And I think it's really because like being Catholic, like we have a lot of very conservative views. And me being a little more liberal growing up in America, I don't support some of those views. So yeah, I think it's all in context with your own moral code because you can choose to believe some things and not believe the others. Like it's all a balance, and some people might call that like cherry picking or taking some parts of your religion and leaving the other ones out that might not be as appealing. But I don't think it's harmful at all to be doing that. If you're not like forcing your opinions on others, like when you're doing that, then it's harmful. But if it's just for you, then I think it's okay to like look at um, like things here and then things here. So that's something I'm always struggling with it. And yeah, I think that's a part of like being in the middle. Our generation is like very stuck almost between two different sides a lot of the time, whether it's like with friends versus family or certain values against other values. For me, a lot of time it's my religion and like the political views of those around me. So yeah, do you feel stuck in the middle at all sometimes?
I mean, personally, I don't think so, but I think that's because I'm a person that's pretty impressionable, and I feel like if you can like argue your opinion to me with enough facts because I'm like a very factual person, then I kind of am like, okay, I can see your side, like
Sure.
and then I might even like start to like support that opinion or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I would say honestly like not really, because I don't know. I feel like a lot of my beliefs, honestly, though, are like very different from each other, and like they sometimes don't really go along with each other.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, saying that kind of makes me think back to like when we were learning in philosophy class about Kierkegaard's whole leap of faith thing, and I feel like some of my like philosophies don't really match up, and in some of them I kind of have to take that leap of faith.
Yeah, it's all part of like growing up, I guess. I don't have any experience with that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Um, yeah, I think that contributes to our being sheltered because there's so many aspects to being sheltered. Like you can be sheltered physically, I guess, and you can be sheltered mentally um, in terms of like political sheltering or sheltering from different like principles and stuff like that. It's like a whole spectrum. I think in our middle school, we always say we were really sheltered because we had to test to get in, and we were also like our middle school was part of an elementary school, so like we were always around younger kids. So that was definitely an aspect in our being sheltered. Everyone says
Yeah.
definitely not sheltered in terms of like what is it like political views because we talked about a lot of political stuff and social issues but we were definitely sheltered in terms of like drug use and I don't know, like getting into trouble. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think definitely at our middle school. And I think it has something to do with the testing aspect because I feel like that made it so it attracted a certain type of people with like, I don't know, a certain type of brain because I feel like tests are made specifically towards a certain
Yeah.
so I feel like because of that we were all kind of the same in a way. But I would definitely agree. I think we were pretty sheltered. I don't know if it was because like the whole testing thing meant that it was attracting more like studious kids or whatever. So we were like less wanting to be like drugs and stuff like that. But honestly, like even in the school systems, like the amount of pressure that colleges like put on us, like that leads a lot of people to drugs that way. So like I don't know. I think it was interesting that compared to other schools around us, we were so sheltered. And I honestly wonder kind of why that is. And I wonder if it kind of has to do with our personalities as a class.
Sure.
Because I other classes at our school were definitely pretty different and less sheltered.
Yeah.
So I feel like I don't know, like honestly, like I feel like we just had a good solid class.
Yeah, I think within Gen Z too, there are certain subsets, you know, like I feel like my grade or the people like I don't know, my grade, our grade is very different from my sister's grade. We're both in Gen Z, but our personalities and the general like vibe of the class is very different because our environment is changing so quickly. So I think it's
Yeah.
all context to our environment, honestly. It's not as much about our personality because our personality like is affected by our environment, you know?
Yeah, no, and that like brings back to that whole like philosophical debate that's like nature versus nurture. And I think that's such an interesting thing because I totally think it's like nurture in my opinion. Because like I feel like your surroundings honestly like that's like what makes you who you are. Like this one substitute teacher we always have, he always likes to remind us that like you are the sum total of all your experiences. And I
Right.
think that's such like a nice little quote because I think it's so true because like I feel like even if some like things in my life had been like if I were born somewhere else, like I feel like my life it would just be radically different than it is right now, even with like my family and everything and
Yeah.
lots of other things so different.
Yeah, I think our like the time that we're in right now, like our teenage years and our childhood, like it's like during the time of our development, like mentally too. So like it plays a huge part in like our worldview and our environment, you know? Like it our environment right now
Yeah.
is going to affect like our mental state for like the rest of our lives, which is kind of scary to think about because like if we're stressed out right now, that could affect us in the future, that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and like the whole like yeah, and I think a lot of people are under a lot of stress because I feel like with college and everything, like at least for me, I know that's always been like a huge stress factor, and I feel like I see that in a ton of other people I know around me.
Mhm.
And I don't know if previous generations were so much like that, but like, because I feel like they really weren't. Because I feel like obviously as the years go on, the population across the whole world rises, and I feel like because of that, in some ways, it like makes schools harder to get into. There's more people that are going off to college, and like college is just so expensive in general. Like it's just a whole stressful thing.
Yeah, it's like a cycle, honestly. Like colleges put stress on us. We get into colleges, and like we're like making it harder for other kids to get into college, and like it's like a continuous cycle. So like I don't
Yeah,
want to be a downer, but it's just gonna get harder from here, you know. And I
yeah,
think that perspective says a lot about how sheltered we are in terms of like our futures and like pressure on us. Because I'm definitely not sheltered in terms of like knowing like what my future will be. Like I'm pretty realistic about it. I'm not gonna like dream of like doing stuff that I can't. So I think I'm not too sheltered in that, but in other aspects, I'm definitely a lot more sheltered. You know?
yeah, for sure. And I feel like in some cities around here that people consider a lot less sheltered, like Oakland and stuff, because there's a
Right.
lot more like shooting stuff that happened there. I feel like a lot of those people, obviously, I just haven't been there really because I guess because I'm sheltered, but like like seeing those types of perspectives. But I feel like going to a public school, I've been able to see more of like the less sheltered aspects of life, and like people who are definitely a lot less sheltered than I am, and like I feel like they definitely aren't feeling the like pressure of college like I do, and like and there's definitely a lot more other things they have to worry about, like supporting their families and all that stuff. And so like I feel like even though we live not that far away, it's almost like we live in like two different worlds, the sheltered versus like the unsheltered people in
Yeah.
life in that sort of sense.
Yeah, I feel like my personal experience is like the very like epitome of like being sheltered. I'm very privileged. Like I grew up in this town, which our town is known for like senior centers, I'm pretty sure. Like that's like our main point, or like used to be our main point. So it wasn't known for anything other than that. Like it's a relatively small town. And I grew up here, and then I went to a really, really small elementary school and then transferred to our middle school, which was admittedly very sheltered in comparison to the other schools, even within our area. And those schools are relatively sheltered too compared to the other schools in our like not our district, but in the area, I guess. So like very, very sheltered. And now I'm in Catholic school, so that's even more sheltered. So I honestly feel like I can't say a lot about like difficulties and stuff because I grew up like this, you know? So it's, and then I'm Catholic, and my parents are immigrants, so that's just a whole other factor, you know? So it's really based on your environment. So I think the internet,
Yeah.
my interactions and my friends who didn't grow up as sheltered or are becoming to are being more exposed to other things now that like for teenagers, like those interactions are what like keeps me from becoming, I don't know, like a nun. You know what I mean? Like I'm saved by like you and my other friends and the internet, you know?
No, yeah, I get that because like you are like the five people you surround yourself by, like that's the type of person you become. And there's so many studies that really support that, and that's why I think it's so important to surround myself with people with like good morals and beliefs. Like they can have completely different beliefs than me, like politically or whatever, but like as long as they're like a good morally person and they like challenge me and inspire me every day, like I'm like those are the people I want to be around. That's why like I love having like intellectual discussions with people, and I feel like I don't know what other generations were like, but I feel like that's something our generation really lacks, because like I don't know, at least when I talk to my mom, like when I would used to like before like a few years, not like a few years ago, but like last year even, she was just kind of like, oh, like tell me about your school day. And she was kind of surprised like how little like I had intellectual discussions with my friends like outside of the classroom. And I feel like that was something I didn't really notice. But when I realized it, it kind of made me kind of sad, because I love having discussions about like the world like we are like right now. And so I feel like I've been more able to like choose friends recently that challenge me as a person so I can expand on my worldview.
Yeah. I don't know what I was gonna say. I think our generation right now, like it's very divided. At least at my school, a lot of us are very academically driven, so it's not that hard to find people that are willing to have intellectual discussions and have a lot to say about them, especially like in accelerated classes, I'm pretty sure. But at the same time, like um, being as young as we are, like we do want to talk about like silly things, you know, and like gossip and stuff. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm saying like it's really a balance, and um, yeah.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense, because you have to keep up with your mental health. And I feel like talking about the lighter aspects of life like makes it lighter and easier to process everything.
Uh-huh. I think the privilege almost of talking about lighter issues kind of shows how sheltered we are, because like we have nothing better to talk about or worry about than like a certain person,
Yeah.
or like the color of, I don't know what I'm going with this, but like or like sillier things, you know. And I honestly feel privileged to be able to have time to talk about those things and like the brain space to think about those things and stress over those things. But at the same time, like we're overwhelmed. Like our environment, like America, like wants us to keep going and driving us to like take on responsibilities and be independent, So we're definitely not sheltered in that aspect, like the aspect of our futures and like being realistic about how we're going to make money or how we're going to get a good education, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Because, like, I think as early as middle school, I was definitely always thinking about college. And, like, even I was like, one thing I was always asking myself in middle school is, like, what do I want to be? Like, what do I want to major in? And I'm like, looking back, that's just so ridiculous. Like, how am I supposed to know? Like, I was literally going to go to college like 10 years later almost.
Right.
And then that's when I'm choosing my major. Like, am I supposed to know like 10 years ahead of time? And I think it's kind of ridiculous that I was even contemplating like what I'm going to be, because looking back, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people like in like Halloween and stuff, like people would dress up as like professions and know what they want to do, which also goes to show how like
Yeah.
unsheltered we are, because we can like partake in those holidays and stuff, and they're pretty big for us. I feel like that makes any sense. But like, I don't know, I never really knew what I wanted to be, but it was something I always thought about, which I think is something I shouldn't have been focusing on as like a kid, really. I feel like I should have been more just focused on like learning, not college.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, at least right now too, and part of our childhood, like we're so worried and stressed about the future that I know a lot of us are kind of missing out on like the broadcasted teenage like lifestyle, you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm missing out. It's already like I'm already halfway through my teenage years and like I haven't done a bunch of stuff that like I don't know, I've seen on TV when I was younger and stuff. So that was definitely not like a letdown, but something that I thought about kind of a lot like recently, because um, I started watching like shows and stuff, and like all these teenagers are like doing things, and I'm like, oh, I'm just here, like I'm just like worrying about like the future. So I think, yeah, that just shows like the both sides of being sheltered, like sheltered in terms of like having fun, and then sheltered in terms of like looking at your future,
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't know, at least for me, I feel like I because I've been on like social media for a pretty long time, and I got on it at a pretty early age. Like I was definitely on there in like fifth grade, I think, which I mean, I kind of wish I stayed off of it longer, because I feel like like when at first when I was on it, my mom made sure to be like making sure I was making like healthy decisions with it. And I feel like I've been pretty healthy with it most of my time using it. But I think there's definitely times where people post things and I'm like, wow, they like, I don't really like realize this, but in my head, I'm kind of unconsciously thinking like, wow, they're really living the perfect lives. Like, I wish my life could kind of be like that. But the fact is that's just how like people present themselves on the media. Like they could actually be going through a lot and be really stressed and upset and stuff, but they just show like they're living the life or whatever. And I think that's something that we definitely need to be more aware about now that like our generation is so like kind of entrenched in the technology world, and so many of us are on the media a lot and posting.
Like we have to be aware of like differentiating what we see like on a screen and real life. I think that really translates into like our mindset almost, because we're always comparing ourselves. Like that's like a lot of different issues with comparing yourself. But in terms of like lifestyle and stuff, you're like, I wish I could be doing this. It's I don't know, like it shows the different sides of being sheltered again, because some kids
Yeah.
that you see are more sheltered in terms of like their futures, like they don't think about that as much, and so they instead have fun, and that could be like with I don't know, like that could be a way of showing like how they're less sheltered, whereas some kids, are the opposite. So yeah, it's it's very, very varied. And right now, especially, I think we can see that because for me, like I didn't go out that much, even when the pandemic was not a thing. So this isn't like a huge change for me. I'm like, oh yeah, like this is how I spend most of my nights, like in doing like work and being productive. And some kids like who went out and hung out with their friends like all the time are like taking it really hard. So I feel for them, obviously, but it kind of shows like, and that's why I thought a lot about it. I was like, oh, I'm kind of missing out almost, but I feel like it's not healthy to compare your experience because it's all relative to your environment, your parents, or like your friends.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think like, yeah, definitely like movies and stuff. I feel like movies really create unrealistic expectations. And I don't know, I've just always been like, because like, I don't know, I see a lot of people like, I like hanging out with my friends, obviously, but I feel like, oh, and a lot of like, there's like a lot of party culture, at least from what I've seen at my school. And like our generation, I feel like that's always been around.
Yeah.
But like, that's just something I've never been really interested in partaking in. Like, I don't know. I just personally don't. I just like hanging out with like a small group of people, or like I preferably, honestly, just like one on one with someone. So I feel like in this time in like the pandemic and stuff, I've just been able to keep hanging out with people one on one through like FaceTime, which is what I like, which is just replacing seeing them in person. And then when I can do like small groups, it's just like a little like group FaceTime where we like might like play a game or something. And so like I feel like it's not too much different really for me. It's just instead of being there in person, which is still kind of sad because I feel like it's more fun in person. But I feel like it's not too much different.
Yeah, during the pandemic, like I realized like how many people I like talked to like during the school day, and like I consider them my friends, but like not close enough to like contact them outside of school. Like they're like my class friends only.
Yeah.
So that kind of made me sad. I was like, wow, like I only talk to these people because of school. So I don't know where I was going with that again, but yeah, because I'm used to that, and like school is like the center of my life right now. We talked about this like in religion class, like what's the center of your life? Is it your family, your friends? Or mine's definitely school. Most of my friends are because of school and because of shared like academic interests or extracurricular interests. So yeah, like that's like my shelter, I guess. Like I feel comfortable within that, like within school, and I'm not as exposed to other things.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you just said. Like, I think like now that we've had to do online learning, like I'm missing out on developing so many connections with so many of my peers because I talk to them too in like class. And like I've reached out to kind of some of them online, but it's just been kind of weird and it's just like the conversation doesn't like flow as well. And I don't know, like what you were saying before about like how people are like now like 40% of people are like more lonely or whatever.
Right.
Like I don't know, like I feel that like because like I can still talk to like my main friends, but it's kind of hard to like develop new connections with other people that I didn't talk to or like I had minimal talking with time at school. And
Yeah.
like it's just like I can only it's I don't know. I feel like our whole like generation is kind of going to be messed up in terms of relationships, both in terms of like friends and like love interests because like I don't know. I feel like this is like, for a lot of people at least, it's like a prime time for you to like build new connections. And I think like it's really gonna hurt us. But I mean, I don't think this can go on for like that long, but I think it'll still be kind of hurtful to us.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like this pandemic is like, I don't know, not breaking apart relationships, but like definitely slowing them down, at least for me. Cause like, how am I
Yeah.
gonna talk to like that kid who like I have a weird inside joke with, like in my homeroom? Like, I don't like have his number. Like that's like some like an interaction that I have only in school. So it's like it's just a weird feeling, and I'm really looking forward to going back to school next year, just because of this. Um, just because I don't know, I'm sheltered in terms of everything else besides school. Like school is fun for me. Like it's
You'll too.
Yeah, so I think people have to assess like what the center of their life is. Like that's where they're most comfortable. That's what they're sheltered towards. If that makes any sense. Like they block out other stuff and they go towards this thing. That could be school or your family or your friends, or it could be, I don't know, like an art form or something you're really interested in. So um, yeah, so mine is school. Others could have very, very different things. So like once you assess that, I think it's going to be easier for you to feel more comfortable and secure, and then also like work on the other areas that you want to be more comfortable in. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
advice, I guess.
No, I think that is true. And I don't know, I was just thinking about how like when we were like talking about how like there's people that we don't really talk to outside of school, and I was kind of thinking about how like sometimes I like tell my mom like about like random snippets of my day, and I'm like, oh, I miss this person but I can't contact them, and my mom's kind of just like, why not, why can't you? And I feel like kind of the older generations are kind of like that because they use kind of like technology in a different way than us. And I feel like I know this sounds kind of ridiculous, but I feel like there's just kind of like some like social like things that are like kind of more accepted, and there's things you can't like really do. And so like it's just kind of like weird, to reach out to someone like that. Like I mean, like when I've done it, it's just kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't work out. And I feel like my parents don't really understand that because that's not the way they use technology. And like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, like how like our generation gap, and like there are a ton of different things to talk about with that, and with like relationships. So we can definitely talk about that another time. But for now, I guess, like assess what you're sheltered in or sheltered towards, and what is it? Be aware of it, I guess. It's not a bad thing to be sheltered at all. Some people might label it as being too innocent or like kind of like a snob in some areas, maybe. So yeah, just be comfortable with it, I guess. Like it's not a bad thing whatsoever. Like I'm completely happy being sheltered in some aspects. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Like being more comfortable?
Well, I don't know, like just like me thinking about like people being sheltered, I feel like sometimes if you're exposed to things like too young, like it can like honestly be kind of traumatic. So
Yeah.
like I kind of agree that it's in that way like good to be sheltered. I don't know. I feel like it's just a word that has so many different meanings and interpretations. And so like when people like bring it up, it can kind of be interpreted like what somebody's trying to say can be interpreted in the wrong way,
Mhm.
and which leads people to being like feeling like they're being called like they're innocent. Because I definitely know, like my friend told me, she was like, she thought like I called her innocent. I did not mean to call, like that's not what I meant to say at all, but
Yeah.
like that's the way it came across. I use that word. So like I feel like honestly people should just keep their minds like open and assess for themselves their values and beliefs and hold true to who they are, because I know that's something I've sometimes struggled with. And I don't know. I'm trying to, I don't know. I've never considered myself an optimistic person. So in this whole time, I'm just trying to be more optimistic, and that's a goal I've kind of set for myself. And I don't know. A lot of things have just felt like they're going wrong lately, but I keep telling myself like, it's okay. Like if things keep going wrong, like we're gonna get through this. We're gonna be fine. Like, and like, the struggles you go through will make you a stronger person at the end of the day. So when you encounter problems in the future, they'll like just be even easier for you versus other people. So like, even if you think other people aren't struggling, which they probably are, just think like you'll be more prepared than they will be when you hit like conflict in the future.
Yeah. So like what we're trying to say is like we're trying to answer this question, are we sheltered? I think the answer is um no. At least in comparison to our generations past. So I know millennials are definitely labeled as like snowflake generation or like the extremely sheltered generation, which I can kind of see. Whereas us with exposure to the internet and more social media, and we're very active politically and socially. So I think we're not as sheltered. That's my take. What do you think, Isla?
I think it's honestly it can be looked at in so many different ways. I think in terms of just like political and social things, I think we're definitely a lot less sheltered because the internet and all that has helped us to spread ideas so we can be more open-minded. But I think in some ways, in terms of like conflict and what people go through, like some people like in this time, like I don't know, maybe it's just because of like going to a public school, like this is just what I've seen. Like there's a lot of people out there who like have to work and support their families. Like school can't be their number one priority. Like they have to, like, because their family like is really like struggling, and like more on that side of like poverty kind of ish. So I feel like in terms of that, we are sheltered because like our parents, at least mine, like earn a pretty steady income and everything. So like I have a lot of opportunities given to me, and I feel like some other people who might lack opportunities, they're like less sheltered because of that in some ways, because I have more opportunities, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
So I feel like just like different aspects, I'm definitely more sheltered in, and different aspects I'm less sheltered in. So it
Mhm.
just really depends on how you look at it.
Yeah. Also with that, like it's different to be doing something and then like knowing about it, you know? So like maybe like I'm sheltered in terms of like, I don't know, like drugs, but like I know about it, and like I know I have friends who do drugs, and it doesn't like, you know, I don't know, like but I still consider myself sheltered because I don't partake in those things. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
it's
sure,
definitely
the same. And like, yeah, I feel like people shouldn't be pressured into doing things because other people do them. And because I feel like that's such a like a misconception, and like in the movies and stuff you see it, and it's like, oh, if you're not partaking in it, then like you're a wimp and you're so sheltered, and people don't like being labeled as sheltered, and then they're like, well, I'll just do it then. And I'm like, no, you need to hold to your inner morals, like be who you are in life and don't be afraid to be who you are.
yeah. So I think being sheltered has a lot to do with your own moral code. Like follow that, and then you'll be fine. And do the things that you
Yeah,
want to do. You know, like I. Mm. It's a very hard
yeah,
question.
because yeah, life is so short, and like yeah, and if you like present yourself as a different person to the world, then you're just going to be surrounding yourself with people you don't really truly want to be around. So that's why I think it's important to be who you are, because
Yeah.
then you'll like attract like-minded people, and then you'll have like more friends that you would want to actually be like friends with and develop connections with them. So yeah, it's a really important thing. Hard, but it's definitely something that is important.
Yeah. So we'll leave you to ponder that question for yourself. Are you sheltered? Maybe, or maybe not. Um, so we'll see you next week with a new episode. Bye.
Bye.